Hello and welcome back to another episode of Bums Breakdown. Today we're going over the Pittsburgh Riverhounds preview, and as always, joined by Dylan. To begin with, though, we'll go over the last game versus San Antonio. This is coming off a very tough stretch, San Antonio twice and Sacramento as well. A very tough, full-out kind of 2-2 draw. Dylan, what did you make of the last game with San Antonio, though?
It was maybe the most exciting watch we've had in a long time, at least as a home crowd. Excuse me. I was very excited when we scored at first. I think I remember messaging or tagging you in the Discord like we'd scored before the 40th minute. So I was super excited. I thought that Guido goal was easily the best goal we've scored all season. And then that excitement was so quickly taken away by that penalty. And then we conceded and again, and it got even worse. And then we scored another fantastic goal. So it was a roller coaster of emotions. But all things considered, I think the draw was pretty fair. And I know that three draws in a row on paper is probably not what anybody would be looking for a team that should be pushing towards the top of the Western Conference. But I think when you take it in context, San Antonio, the defending champions twice, and then Sacramento, probably the best team in the West. I think we would both agree on that at this point. I think I guess this is all to say I'll take it.
Yeah, I know we spoke about beforehand as far as kind of what we kind of would take as far as points wise from these three games, and we kind of spoke about kind of maybe two would be good, four would be great. So I mean, essentially unbeaten in those three games is not really a bad thing at all. I guess for me, the only worrying thing, looking at kind of, I guess the kind of form table here and looking at the past results here, essentially only 2 wins in our last 8 league games and then only 4 wins in our last 13. I mean, we've slowly slipped down the table a little bit. Right now, sitting 5th in the Western Conference, and Oakland kind of right behind us, only 1 point behind, with a game in hand as well. So I'm going to assume if Oakland at least get a point or win in the next game, we're down to 6th. So again, I think not great, but again, to get all these hard games out the way, I mean, we haven't got to play San Antonio again, haven't got to play Sacramento again, or Phoenix. Sets it up pretty good for the rest of the season. I know we kind of spoke about the performance as well, though. I mean, for you, would you say definitely that's our best performance so far this season? Where would you rank that amongst the other games?
I think, yeah, overall, it's probably our best performance. Not our best defensive performance necessarily, but just in terms of a team functioning from front to back, it really felt like we maybe hit a gear we haven't seen this season. Both of the goals were goals I think earlier this year we don't score. So, I think it's pretty fair to say that's definitely our best home performance. And probably our most complete performance, like across a 90 minutes, not just a 45 minutes, one half or the other.
Yeah, and obviously for me, I think a big part of that's down to kind of the change to a kind of a back four and playing more direct. And no, predominantly we've played kind of with a back three, back five for most of kind of the past 2-3 years, and then pretty much always going kind of playing out the back, very kind of patient build up. But it's nice to see a big change in the way we play and kind of how we kind of build up from the back, kind of going more direct. Not being afraid to kind of play, I guess, some of these risky passes into the strikers, which I think is what Darmus has kind of been calling out for most of the season already as well. So it remains to be seen whether we see more of the kind of direct style of play or kind of go on the back four. Although I will say that I guess Pittsburgh plays somewhat similar to San Antonio as far as kind of how they, I guess, go a bit more direct, a bit longer from the goalkeeper out the back. But obviously going into Pittsburgh and how they've played so far this season, right now they are sitting second in the Eastern Conference, only 1 point behind Charleston. But they do have a game in hand, so again, more than likely they'll go ahead and leapfrog them and get that top spot, depending on the result against us. But again, looking at it here, 7 wins, 6 draws, and 2 losses in 15 games. And then looking at them in the US Open Cup, they lost to Cincinnati in the quarterfinal, 3-1. But they did go ahead and beat Columbus Crew and New England Revolution as well. But then looking at Pittsburgh so far this season, would you expect to see them sitting so high right now?
I don't know if I would have had them, tipping the top of the Eastern Conference at this point. But they are a very solid team defensively, as you kind of talked about. And Bob Lilly, their coach, is well known around the USL. It seems like as a really solid defensive coach. So I think it's fair to say they are kind of like the San Antonio of the East in terms of play style. So yeah, I expect them to be in and around the top group of the East, but I didn't necessarily expect them to have as good of a season as they've had. And Albert Diqua, their striker, I think is tied for top goal scorer in the USL, or top goal scorer he is. So they're having a great year. It's definitely not going to be an easy game, especially going across the country.
And I mean, in the big loss for them in the offseason was obviously Russell Cicerone going over to Sacramento. And it wasn't as though Diqua was a new signing this season. So again, imagine if they had kept Cicerone in that team. Can only imagine how good they would have been so far. But kind of moving into kind of their last game was against Oakland, was their draw come the end. But Dylan, do you want to walk us through how they lined up in that last game versus Oakland?
Yeah, sure. I tried to watch what I could of that game, and it was honestly not the most eventful. But so I don't know Pittsburgh's lineup that well, full disclosure. So we're just going off like you said last game. But Zamudio in goal, I think has been having a good year. Biasi at right wing back, DeShields, Farrell, and Dos Santos in the middle, and Rovira at left wing back. The midfield four is Forbes, Griffin, Ibarra, and Etu, with the wider players kind of getting forward in the attack. And then last game they had Albert Kiza start up top. Albert Diqua, I don't know if they're both. I don't know if I got those names right, but Kiza started up top because Dequa's been hurt, and I don't know exactly who we should expect to see. It's not like Kiza's a bad player in his own right, so it's not like we're getting a breather or anything if Dequa doesn't play. But I'm gonna go. I think we will go Kiza just based on recent availability.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough enough right now to figure out who's going to be kind of fit and healthy for us, let alone with these other teams here. Also, looking at the lineup here, Joe Farrell, I believe, was at Phoenix last season, so a good pickup for them in the back line as well. And then I know recently John Morrissey, also known as USL Tactics, posted kind of his essentially kind of USL first team, second team. So far this season, no Diqua and Arturo Odinez, who is usually their kind of middle centre back, who also missed that last game versus Oakland as well. And then Danny Griffin in centre midfield, I think John put him in his kind of all USL second team. So again, a lot of good players in that team. I guess lucky for us right now, two of those players are looking like they might be out of this next game. So I can't complain too much there. But pretty much, again, they play like a 5-4-1, kind of into like a 3-4-3. Again, they've also conceded the second fewest amount of goals in the whole of the USL as well. And then, so again, also we know they're defensively solid. They pretty much sit back in kind of those bank of four and a bank of five, kind of the lone striker, and then kind of look to counter attack from there. And then play pretty direct out from the goalkeeper. Obviously, I know John has posted another kind of infographic as well. And aside from Phoenix, Pittsburgh usually, I mean, out of the passes from the goalkeeper, go along the second amount of out of all the teams in the whole of the US as well. So, no doubt it'll be a tough game. I mean, Dylan, from what you've seen of Pittsburgh, kind of what would you say are kind of their key, I guess, how do they try and play, honestly?
I mean, they're a defensive first team. I don't think that is to say that they don't offer much in attack, but they definitely look to keep it tight at the back, and then put numbers forward when it's advantageous for them. So like we kind of alluded to before, I think it's fair to make the parallels to San Antonio. Maybe not quite as extreme as San Antonio. They're a pretty extreme example of the kind of defense long ball type play, but Pittsburgh definitely are more kind of maybe nuanced version of that. So I fully expect Loyal will have their time on the ball. The question is, will they be able to do anything with it? You know?
Yeah, I think the one thing I guess we have going for us is that, I mean, obviously like I said, we're comparing them to somewhat San Antonio, but they haven't really got the kind of physical presence or the kind of aerial threat, I don't believe. As much as San Antonio, it's more so kind of at least somewhat on the floor and just kind of quick counterattacks, which I think at times we've kind of struggled to deal with. I mean, looking back to kind of the Miami game away, we kind of struggled a bit there with kind of the quick counterattack. So again, we'll see how the game's going to play out. Like I said, Am I looking forward to this matchup? I mean, right now, not particularly. I think before the season, looking at the kind of schedule, I was like, okay, we've got 3 tough games in San Antonio, twice in Sacramento, Pittsburgh, maybe somewhat a kind of a game to kind of pick our feet up again. But with how well they've done this season, it's going to be definitely another tough one. So the games aren't getting any easier as we move on in the season. And then obviously we kind of spoken about they play very direct. So last game we did switch to more of a 4-2-3-1. Dylan, do you think we keep with the same formations considering that they play somewhat similar to San Antonio?
I think it's a pretty good bet. Well, and also considering we'll be on the road, a long road trip to start, an even longer road trip. I wouldn't be surprised to see that approach again. It seemed to bear some fruit last time out.
Yeah, so it's no doubt. I mean, I hope Nate switches or keeps with the same kind of lineup and the same formation. But Dylan, you're going to walk us through kind of our lineup last game, and obviously the one we're predicting to be the same one for this one.
Yeah, sure. So Koke was in net. He seems to be back healthy, so I think we'll continue to see him. Riley, Stoneman, Adams, and Martin from right to left with a back line. Riley kind of played, not inverted fullback, but he was kind of playing a more defensive fullback role with Moon staying wide on the right there. So I think it's safe to say we'll see that again because I think there's a lot of flexibility there, right? If you wanted to fall into true like 3 at the back, 5 at the back shape, I think there's the flexibility there to do it. So I think we'll continue to see that. But anyway, so that's the back line. In the CMs, I think Corona was on the bench last game, right?
Yeah.
So he might come in, but I continue to have questions about his fitness because he's just not played sometimes when there hasn't really been an obvious reason for him not to. So we've gone Martin and Guido at the CMs. Guido, obviously, I would say had easily his best game of the season against San Antonio. So I'd love to see him keep that rolling. And Colin Martin has quietly worked himself into form. So with Charlie out and Corona, excuse me, having some fitness questions, I think it's really the obvious choice. And then as far as the attack, I already kind of talked about Moon on the right wing, but who else do you see in the attack? I think there's a few people we could throw in there.
Yeah, I mean, we've spoken about Collier being somewhat of like a super sub off the bench, but I do think he played very well in that kind of attacking midfield position in that last game, which, again, before the season, I don't think I'd ever imagined Collier being our attacking midfielder, but I thought he did very well in that spot there. And then Conway on the left wing. I mean, we still have Toomey and Adrian Perez kind of missing out of this lineup here, so we do have players who come into those positions. And I do think the good way kind of lining up in a 4-2-3-1 gives Toomey the ability to kind of be a winger, which, I mean, his primary position is that, although he's kind of played as more of a kind of, I guess, a secondary striker, attacking midfielder. Then even in the kind of previous games too, more of a centre midfielder as well, kind of in that somewhat of a Guido role. Then we've also gone with Damas up top as a striker. I think, again, I know probably carrying a knock from that last game. Hopefully he's kind of fit and healthy to go. We've kind of had 10 days off between the last game and the next one. So hopefully he's back there. But like you touched on as far as kind of the flexibility in that team there, I mean, I think easily we go to like a back 3, back 5 with kind of Moon tucking in and kind of having Moon and Elijah as the 2 fullbacks there. So again, lots of flexibility in the team there. I'm happy with that lineup. Would you say right now, if we do play a 4-2-3-1, that's our strongest lineup, or who else would you kind of chuck in there if they were fit and healthy?
I mean, if Charlie's fit and healthy, he's in the team for me. If Corona's fit and healthy, he's in the team for me. But I honestly couldn't tell you who I would take out. Maybe Collier. I still like him off the bench, but other than that, I really don't know who I would take out. So, is this our strongest possible lineup? No, it's not. Does this formation get the best out of some of our players? I think that it does. So, I don't know that we're ever going to find a formation that fits all of our best players in, right? We've got too many guys we're trying to squeeze in. But I do like this new look, and I would like to see more of it.
Yeah, I think the main thing, obviously, Nate's kind of gone for with signing players is kind of the flexibility of positioning the players here and there. And I think the kind of squad of players we have right now suits the kind of tactical changes here and there. But again, with the injuries we've had and kind of players kind of being suspended here and there, it's been very tough to see kind of our strongest lineup at least play kind of multiple games in a row. And then moving on to the key matchups here and things to look out for. I've got down here, how do we fare on a long East Coast away trip? Again, it's never easy to make these long trips. And I do believe whether it's after this game or the next one, we are actually going to stay out on the East Coast. So we're not traveling back to San Diego. And then here, kind of touching on Guido again here, can he build on his last performance? I think definitely was his best performance so far this season, and at least more of a step now to seeing kind of the true and real Guido from what he has kind of shown in previous years. And then also here, how well can we create tax versus the second best defense in the league? Again, going to be very hard to break Pittsburgh down, and I don't particularly like playing its team to play this way, partly because it causes us so many issues. And then really also kind of touching on that as well, can we break down a team and let us sit in? And then can we stop Pittsburgh? Can we stop them on the counterattack? Which I think also has been a weakness for us. Again, we like to kind of slowly build up, put pressure on them, and then kind of we always seem to get caught on the break. And then lastly here, will Nate tweak anything tactically? I think there's been a question there for the last couple of weeks, and it's good to see that he has changed things tactically. And kind of going off the last game versus San Antonio, I think it worked very well. But Dylan, kind of going over those kind of key matchups, things to look out for. Anything else you want to add on to those, or anything that you think I may have missed?
I mean, I think just to reiterate, I think the biggest thing is the long East Coast trip. I can't, without commenting on whoever does the scheduling for the USL. I think a 4-game road trip, 3 of which are, across the country, is pretty brutal. Probably the most brutal stretch any team will play this year. I don't have the time or the energy to back that up with facts, but I'm fairly certain it's at least in the top 3. So that is going to be a good test of character. I think we've probably are feeling good after this. I know it's been 3 draws, but against the teams we've played and how we performed. So, can we keep that momentum rolling into an away stretch? That's always hard to do.
Yeah, it seems strange to be somewhat in a good mood after 3 draws in a row. But I do think the performances have been good in those games, albeit kind of, I guess, earlier in the season we were getting wins and kind of, I guess, somewhat good results, but honestly, the performances on the pitch, I don't think we're up to scratch and kind of at least to our expectations. So I'm optimistic for the rest of the season. Maybe the position in the league doesn't kind of necessarily show. I think the level we're at right now. But again, also it shows kind of how competitive and how good the USL is this season. Again, we've kind of spoken about kind of we've gone through a lot of tough games and a lot of hard teams. But again, there is no real kind of any easy teams in the kind of the whole of the USL. Maybe kind of the last game on this East Coast stretch versus Hartford could be somewhat of an easy game. But even then, I think the Hartford game is, I think I saw earlier this season, is the most or the furthest we'll ever travel for a USL game in our kind of brief history. So even though I guess they're bottom of the league right now in the Eastern Conference, it's going to be tough no matter what. And then moving in to, as always, my favourite part of the show, the predictions for the game. Again, it's tough with this one here. Again, I've gone for wins for the most part, but after only having 2 wins in the last 8, I'm leaning more towards changing from the kind of usually optimistic self I try and go with. But Dylan, as always, go over you first. What are you predicting as the outcome for this game?
Well, I think I'll surprise you here, but I feel really good after that San Antonio game. I know that we maybe feel like we could have won that game, but I really think without a couple of silly mistakes, we do win that game. But more importantly, I know that I've harped on this a few times in past episodes about obviously you want to win games, but I also just, as a fan, I want to have fun watching my team. And that San Antonio game was the most fun I've had watching Loyal this season. Both of those goals they scored were the kind of things I want to see. That's what I'm paying money to go see. So I'm riding that wave, and I'm going to go with the away day loyalty special, which is the 3-2 road win. I will go Guido for 2, really stamps his mark on the season for the first time, and I will give Moon a game winner. He's due for 1. And then for Pittsburgh, I think Kizza, and I'll say maybe Deekwa off the bench if he's fit. But yeah, I think we'll see the Loyal Classic, the 3-2 away win.
Okay. And obviously, still neither of us have a correct prediction for the season. I know the. Can you remember your prediction for the San Antonio game last one? I think I went with 2-1. So whenever they score the goal, I was like, okay, even though we're drawing now, I might get a chance. But I think you went with 3-2, if I remember correctly. So
I think I
you were
went 3-1, so I don't
3-1.
think I was.
Okay.
No, yeah.
But I'm going to go with, it's a tough one here. I'm going to go somewhat safe, and I'm going to say a 2-2 draw here. Again, 4 draws in a row, I don't want that. But with how good Pittsburgh are doing so far this season, with it being a long away trip, I would probably take a 2-2 draw. But I will go with goal scorers coming in the shape of Guido again. And then I'll go with Conway to get back on the score sheet. And then for Pittsburgh, I'm going to chuck in I'm going to go Kizza here again as somewhat of a lone strike. He's more than likely going to get a goal. And then I'm going to go Griffin from the midfield as well. So it's going to be tough. Like I said, it could go either way here with kind of how our form's looking. I think a draw is somewhat a safe bet. But obviously, to get a win from this game, I'll be kind of over the moon. But anything else to add in before we wrap things up here?
Yeah, I think Highmark Stadium in Pittsburgh, where the Riverhounds play. I think you and I have actually talked about this off camera sometime. Just that it's one of those stadiums that I would love to go visit sometime. It's super beautiful view of downtown Pittsburgh from the stands, and I know that their fan base turned out big time. They had a home fixture. I think it was against, I want to say, Columbus Crew. They beat them in the Open Cup, and they had an incredible crowd. So I don't know much about Pittsburgh. I don't know much about their fan base, but they're a club with a solid history, and they're a good team. So it's an away day I would love to make sometime, even though it's definitely going to take some planning.
Yeah, it's definitely. I mean, I've been lucky enough to play there when I was in college. Played 2 games there, and I will say probably the nicest backdrop to any stadium that I've seen in the US. And definitely for me, the nicest backdrop at any stadium I've ever played at. So definitely one if you are kind of making a trip out east. Definitely stadium to go to. A nice view of the bridges behind. I believe the Pirates and the Steelers stadiums you can see from the higher mark as well. So again. Be a nice day out if you can take anything from it, but no doubt another tough one. And then looking forward to the next games after this one. We are going up against Indy 11 the following Saturday, another away trip, and then Hartford to round off that Eastern away days. And then back to another away game versus Colorado Switchbacks on July 14th before we play the German Giants, Borussia Dortmund. But again, thanks for listening or watching, and we'll see you guys very soon.